hackers, 2CP reworks, and the new competitive mode. Jeff Kaplan has been really busy on the forums the past few days. We've got a lot to cover, getting right into it. Neri reports that on the Korean servers alone, nearly 7,000 players were recently banned for hacking. Seems like quite a high number to me. Kind of shows how pervasive this problem is. I have no idea how to extrapolate that over to the other regions and what percentages of hackers might be plaguing games and as well getting caught in this ban wave. But presumably one of them went to the forums to plead their case, and Jeff Kaplan laid down the smackdown saying that we detected and reviewed multiple cheats on this account. Goodbye. I think we all enjoy Jeff giving the cold shoulder to toxic or cheating players in our community. More of that, please. But besides that, there's been a lot of talk about new content coming to the game as well as reworks to some current things. In this forum thread asking about perhaps an experimental card to rework Bastion, who's a character that doesn't really find a home. However, I would argue in certain hero bans, he has been quite a competitive hero, actually. He kind of oscillates between being hard to deal with and a potential meta component, or just completely useless in the right contexts. So it's a reasonable thing to ask for sure, but Jeff Kaplan responds that they're not currently working on any Bastion changes, but are happy to listen to any feedback, but does announce that the next experimental card is going to be targeting crowd control reduction across multiple heroes. Crowd control are the things that stop you from moving, stunning you, freezing you, etc., etc. Jeff's saying that the next experimental card is going to have a widespread nerf, and I think so many players would be excited to hear this. My buddy Nateson always has brought up how obnoxious characters like Doomfist and Wrecking Ball and Mei are to play against, with most of their power coming from stopping you from being able to move your character. I think there's severe ramifications if we go the other route. We have to remember what dive meta was like before Brigida was instituted in order to try to combat it and slow the game down. There's definitely pros and cons to both sides. One makes the game more like a MOBA, the other makes it more like Quake. There were eras where Tracer kind of could just hard carry if she was good enough, and it's interesting that Jeff may be toying with the idea of bringing the game closer to that idea. With far more heroes now, I don't think it's as cut and dry as a simple solution where mobility used to just beat everything, but we'll have to see. I would suspect that the experimental card could go live anytime next week. He mentioned this a few days ago, and I thought there was a chance it could have gone up this week. With the recent state of the world, I know it's difficult to keep things moving, but since he's announcing it this definitively, it sounds like a done deal. It'll be interesting to check that out, if it's more a test for them or more similar to the more recent experimental cards, which were just letting us test most of the changes they already were going to do anyway. Are these changes likely to come through, or is it a true experiment like the 132 system was that wasn't really intended to go live? He doesn't say, so it'll be interesting to see what you guys think and if we're ready for mobility to be stronger again in Overwatch. Jeff gets asked about 2CP. This forum poster argues that since Horizon and Paris are being reworked, can we just rework the 2CP game mode in general? Jeff replies in saying, we discuss 2CP all the time. It's one of the top discussions we have in the design group. We've spent more time trying to address that game mode and trying changes than any other mode. We've also reworked the maps the most. The mode has some fundamental flaws depending on the context you're coming from, pro or comp or quick play. Contrary to what some communities would have you believe, not everyone dislikes the modes or the maps. We'll continue to try solutions for both the mode and the maps. It's definitely something that's top of mind for us. What's more, he gets asked if the team has ever considered splitting the maps up into 3 capture points. Jeff replies in saying that this wouldn't be a minor redo. It essentially would require rebuilding all the maps from scratch, and that's a lot of work. I'm a little confused why there is no agency in being able to pick the maps and modes you play. In the same way that you aren't forced to play heroes you don't want to play, I wish the game allowed you to play the modes and maps you want to play at least a little bit, whether it's voting in the game or having certain vetoes when you queue like StarCraft. We spoke about this ad nauseum forever for years, so I apologize if the conversation gets boring, but players having agency over what they play, I think is important. I'm a player that likes playing 2CP, but with players that also like playing 2CP. If I have a team that doesn't know how to play it, it's horrible. It's the worst mode easily. And that's as someone who enjoys playing it because I like the tactical elements of combining ultimates together. That's a strength of mine as a player. Whereas King of the Hill is a bit more about mid-fight mechanics, which I lack as an old man. So if given the option to somehow sway towards Assault to play with players that also wanted to play Assault, I would take it because it probably would give me more SR. But furthermore, I think the problem of 2CP is that it just isn't a good mode to play with random teammates because the depth of how you should play it and how you should change your tactics as a full team is so complicated, and there's multiple theories on how to do it. It isn't as simple as the other modes, which generally push you along to do the right thing. I would say it's a pure esports mode, and the problem with that is ranked isn't a pure esport experience. It's intentionally built to also allow you to kick off Steam after work, and that just doesn't apply to a mode that requires you to regroup correctly and ult correctly. So the fact that we're forced to play this mode when we don't want to is concerning to me. And I say, Jeff, sure, not everyone dislikes 2CP, but let us run that experiment on the player base and see what they choose when they get any agency whatsoever. I don't think that data is going to even be close. Good news, though, new stuff is around the corner. Jeff responds to a post saying they don't want a gold border, and Jeff announces that in Overwatch 2, this system is going to be changed. They'll find a way to recognize your accomplishments for those who care. The current plan is for those borders to go away and be replaced with a different system. Especially with Overwatch 2 having a heavy PvE element, the first thing you should think of is Diablo 3 in more ways than one, I would say. I think the games probably should aim to be very comparable if they want to effectively reward the grind of playing it over and over again. And one of them is all these different portraits that you can put on for earning different things, or some of it's DLC. Different ways to express yourself to the team will be pretty cool, especially when you earn it in one mode and can use it in another. I'm definitely excited for that. Another quality of life improvement, this player asks for a retreat voice line. Jeff says that they're working on a cool update that will address this feedback. More info in the next dev update, but there's no ETA on that. So this feels to me that there's a dev update in the works, but I'm starting to scratch my head over what it could be. Simple voice line updates doesn't seem big enough to warrant a dev update, so perhaps it's an overhaul of a bunch of things getting prepped for Overwatch 2, because I don't really suspect too many dev updates or big updates in general, since we just had Echo before Overwatch 2. So I would imagine a package of quality of life things that they've been working on. Definitely with so many other games, whether it be Apex or Valorant, having a more robust ping system to be able to communicate with your team. This is an area that Overwatch definitely could improve on, and it seems like the dev team have been thinking about it. A ping system in Overwatch gets really spammy with 6 players. Jeff has already said that, but the comms wheel definitely could be upgraded. I think there is some functionality some players don't even know exists or don't utilize it. For example, when you bind, acknowledge, or group up, there's cool things you can do with it as opposed to just using it on the comms wheel, and this does go for PC and console as well. You should use your D-pad to bind some of these comms options. You can use the group up command while aiming at a teammate, and they will say, "I'm with you." This is helpful because, for example, you can announce that you have nano boost, which you should be calling out your ultimate with that hotkey all the time anyway. That's just great information for your team to play off of. But in combination with that, you, for example, can look at your Genji, press group up, and Ana will say, "I'm with you," and that gives your Genji confidence that you're ready to give them nano boost without even saying anything, right? There could definitely be more of these very intuitive voice lines that the characters can say that really expedites a lot of communication requirement. It's much, much different than a player trying to use comms to explain something that can be said with a button press, and players, I think, typically react faster to sound cues in the game anyway. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on this one. Retreat would be a good one, but what are other voice lines that you wish you could just bind to a button or a D-pad direction in order to tell your teammates something? One that I think of is "follow me," because oftentimes one of the biggest problems I see is that players just simply don't go to the right spot on the map. Like, they'll just ride the cart and get wrecked by high ground constantly and not use it, or on King's Row, at lower ranks especially, they'll just walk into the choke against Maywall and sim turrets that are all set up there when there is a very easy window to go out of in the theater. If you just walk a different direction, a lot of those strategies instantly become terrible. And if you don't use a mic, it can be hard to get your teammates even just to realize to do that. So that's mine. Let me know yours. Next up, if you don't know, there is a arcade game mode live right now, which is classic competitive. Well, they don't call it that exactly. It's called competitive open queue, and it does use the competitive hero pool system, but it has no requirement on role queue. That means everybody can queue instantly. You can make any team comp you want, just like you used to in the good old days, quote unquote, which means you could play GOATs if you wanted to, but most players are just going to pick DPS, right? On the forums, there's been a lot of players very happy with this mode, and Jeff has replied with some comments on it in response to a player incredibly happy that he can get fast queue times on DPS, and hey, playing 4 DPS isn't that bad. Jeff Kaplan replies in saying that they're discussing the future of the mode right now, which seems to imply that there's a chance it might be a main mode. Here, he shows a breakdown by region of average playtime percentage for the different modes in a single day. So this is interesting, not just for the ranked classic, but just in general to see what different regions play. In every region but the Switch, normal ranked is by far the biggest. Jeff does explain that on the Nintendo Switch, ranked representation is lower because a lot of players just aren't level 25 and being able to unlock it anyway. It's only been out, what has it been, a year? So most players just play quick play to level up their account. I found it interesting that PlayStation and Xbox have a far bigger difference between ranked and quick play than it seems the PC areas do, but granted, console is all put in together, not by region, so I don't know if those stats change when you combine the different PC regions that he has split up, so that's a little bit confusing to me. But for example, in China, the ranked player population is the lowest, barely above quick play, whereas it goes the other way in Korea, where quick play is much lower and the new ranked mode is very high, which makes sense due to how hardcore Korean gamers tend to be, right? Even when they don't play ranked, they want to play like a different version of ranked, which between the two of them is 60% of playtime in that region, as opposed to like NA, where quick play's pretty close to the ranked community, and especially when you add in all the arcade game modes, it is bigger in terms of playtime. It'll be interesting to know how all of these numbers change when Overwatch 2 comes out. And as for the classic ranked mode, by any metric, I think you could say that it is a pretty successful playlist, seeing as in a lot of regions, it is one of the top modes, often beating out Workshop. So with that kind of data, and Jeff kind of hinting that they're talking about the future of the mode, there's a chance it might be a permanent mainstay, because I don't think any of the other competitive mode variations would have had this much of a response to it. We've had like competitive CTF and Lucio Ball and things like that. I don't have any data to base this on, just queue times alone, but I get the impression that those modes weren't as successful. Although I haven't tried the mode myself, I remember what it's like to play a ranked mode where you don't really have a team comp ever. I don't really have much interest in going back to that world, but for players that just want to play their favorite hero and go at Overwatch in that way, it can be great, especially if we get players into the playlist that best suits them. If you don't care about having a competitive team comp and just want a faster queue time for DPS, all the power to you, but as we know, on a serious competitive level, running multi-tanks and supports and no DPS is probably still the best comp to this day. We never got to see Sigma in the GOATS era, and considering Sigma is Junkrat with a shield, I have to imagine that if the rule set were reverted tomorrow to remove 222 roll lock, Sigma being able to be a damage dealer replacement would easily be overpowered, and triple tank, triple support would be insane yet again, even with hero pools, just now that there's so many options and so much overlap. Maybe like Echo GOATS would be the meta if you actually were to treat it seriously. Speaking of Echo, due to her play rate being so high, this forum post wonders what the reaction will be when she'll be banned next week, being caught up in the new algorithm Blizzard is using in order to determine the bans for the week in both ranked and the Overwatch League. Keep in mind that that will be announced Sunday night at the end of the broadcast, and we'll likely cover a breakdown for that rotation Monday. Jeff replies to this saying that they debated this but did not want to interfere with the algorithm. Worst case scenario, if she is removed from the pool, she'll be back a week later. Plus, there are plenty of ways to play a hero outside of comp. That is a fair point. I do have a lot more I want to say about this hero pool problem, but I'll just leave it for now and discuss it more in depth in future videos. I tried to explain some of the problems I had with hero pools when they came out. Overall, I'm happy that they tried this system, but using this algorithm in this way, I think is a step in the wrong direction. And overall, all the data that I've gained anyway leads me to believe that the ban system we originally wanted is just far better in every way. But I'll go more into depth in that in future videos. For now, I will head out. But before you click off the video, please be sure to leave it with a like if you haven't already. Hit subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you actually get notified when our future videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.